The war on information is real, and we are losing it. That was the provocative headline of a Seattle Times article a couple of weeks ago that got a lot of people talking. Fake news is a real thing, and it threatens to tear the fiber of our democracy apart if we're not careful. Here to discuss this, University of Washington assistant professor Kate Starbird. She's done some groundbreaking research on this topic. Great to have you here this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. So the truth in our society has become subjective. The term fake news has become part of the American lexicon now. Trust in the media at its lowest level ever. So through your research, what did you learn about kind of why this has happened?
I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to say in a short period of time, but we've got a lot of different factors happening at the same time. One is that the economic models of journalism have changed. Ad revenue is dropping. We also have journalists are having to compete at a new pace because social media goes so fast and other things go so fast that journalists are actually being forced to hit this real-time reporting model that doesn't necessarily align with their traditional practice is. But above and beyond that, I think there's been a purposeful effort to sort of to reduce the trust. People are actually attacking mainstream media and mainstream media, legacy media in different ways, and to erode our trust in these outlets.
What are the dangers of this? Can you give a historical example as to, you know, when the truth is systematically distorted or perverted and the effect that had?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to concentrate on any one particular case, but I will say that, you know, political propaganda and bias in things has been around since probably civilization, and as we've had new technologies, it's evolved, right? So it's evolved with the printing press, with the radio, with the television, cable news, TV. It's evolved all along the way. But right now we have this new evolution happening around social media and online access of information, and how information is sort of fragmented in all these different places, and that's allowed a new kind of propaganda to proliferate.
I want to pop up a graphic really quick, and this is an indication of some of the work that you did. Can you explain what this? I know it's a lot to take in here, but can you explain a little bit what we're looking at here? So
I've actually been looking at a certain kind of, I wouldn't call it fake news. It was actually conspiracy theorizing around crisis events where people claim that, for instance, the Boston Marathon bombing wasn't perpetrated by the suspects. It was actually done by the U.S. Navy SEALs, right? So this was a claim. And so I've been studying the kinds of websites that propagate those kinds of theories, and I've found that there's an intersection of political propaganda and purposeful disinformation in propagating these kinds of anti-government theories, but there's other kinds of ideologies caught up in it as well.
Okay, so the government right now investigating Russian involvement in the spread of fake news. Is it the Russians that we need to be worried about, or are we doing this to ourselves?
I think we need to be worried about both. So in my research, I was actually very surprised to find that there were several websites that had Russian origins, Russian funding, or very tight connections with Russian organizations, whether they're government organizations or think tanks there, that were helping to propagate conspiracy theories about the U.S. government.
What's the end game for Russia in that?
Their goal, actually, with the disinformation strategies, which they've had for a long period of time, they've been around for 100 years, is to actually erode our trust in information. Exactly what we're talking about here is that we begin to not trust what we see. We begin to think real news is fake news, and then their idea is that a society that doesn't know where to go to trust, that doesn't know what information it can trust, can be easily manipulated.
So obviously, and you've spelled it out pretty well, I mean, there are people out there that are spreading fake news. They are publishing information that they know is false, and they want to change a narrative to fit their conversation point. On the other side of it, there are great journalists out there doing wonderful work, presenting both sides of it. But we're all kind of lumped into the same hole now.
So there's something to be said for that. That may be purposeful, right? So we've got this influx of a lot of just fake news and bad information. At the same time, some of those same sites are turning the finger back around and saying, no, the mainstream media is fake news. Legacy media is fake news. And so we've got, you know, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and your local news site, who have trained journalists who are trying to do the right thing, are having to compete on completely uneven footing with, you know, some startup internet site, who knows who owns it, that's just pumping out fake news, and people are kind of saying, oh, these are they're equally fake news, or they're equally credible, and they're not. And so we've lost this ability to sort of identify credibility, which I think has something to do with the systems that we're using, but also there's just this erosion of our trust. And I think some skepticism is good, but we have to be able to say I should be more skeptical about this thing than I am about, some of these trusted local or at least established media sources where we know.
As a consumer, how do we spot fake news?
It's hard because it comes in packages that are designed to make us like them, that are designed to resonate with us. And there's this thing called confirmation bias, where if we already think that way, then this information aligns with it, we think it's true. And so it's really dangerous. I think the one way I know to spot it, if it really sticks it to the other guy and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel, then it's probably not true. Because real news probably is going to make you feel a little uncomfortable.
Okay, so how does the tide change? I mean, how do we get to a place as a society where the truth is not subjective?
I think we need to have these conversations. I don't think there's one easy solution. I think our systems need to be different. Like our social media is helping to propagate a lot of this, and social media could work differently. The platforms that do this could work differently. I think there's an education component, but not just for young people. I think it's for all of us. And I think there's just an awareness of where is this information coming from? Who is trying to do this? And I think we all should understand that there's some bias out there. But just because some story doesn't go exactly how we think it should go, doesn't mean we throw that whole source out and that we go look at some website that's coming from who knows where with our information. So I think it's awareness.
What you're saying is be a smart consumer.
Yeah.
Do your homework.
Yeah, and then having folks talk about this. We should be having these conversations and becoming aware of where this information's coming from and figuring out who we can trust, how we can find what's credible again.
Great work. I mean, really nice job. Kate Starbird, a pleasure to have you today. She is an assistant professor at the University of Washington. Casey, over to you.